This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are coming to you from the National Association of Counties Convention in Long Beach, California. But we're joined right now by Matt Cate. He is the Executive Director of the California State Association of Counties. Lots of acronyms. We know him well. He joins us in Sacramento. So tell us about this convention. How are CSAC and NACO interacting over this week?
Well, 58 California counties here amongst 3,000 plus national counties.
Right.
California is obviously very important on the national stage.
Right.
We're the largest member of the National Association of Counties. But really, it's a chance for us to kind of take the things that we're struggling with here, come together with the other states and their counties and figure out federally what can we do to make a difference.
Best practices as well.
Best practices, absolutely. Who's doing what that's successful? Where are our struggles, and what do we share in common?
You know what I learned that I didn't know? So I was always intrigued as I've become more involved in covering state government that in California, counties wield a lot of influence over business, human resources, health and human services. I mean, really the county is where the rubber meets the road in terms of government. I wasn't clear if it was that way in other states, and I've learned it is. I mean, the county governments are really kind of the conduit for federal funding, for a lot of state funding, and so you can talk about the mayor, but it's really the county supervisor that has a lot of the power.
True. The mayor runs his police force.
Right.
And he's got parks and, some incidental streets issues.
Right.
And we have everything else.
It's true. And so what issues are California supervisors talking about with their colleagues here from the other 49 states?
Well, really, it goes across the board. Today I was at a meeting about public lands. The fact the federal government owns huge portions of the western United States. And they're supposed to pay the counties
is that what it's called?
Payment in lieu of taxes.
I'm learning. Exactly.
And so rurals are worried about that.
And let's explain that. I think it's important because when if you think about Los Angeles County, the vast majority of it is privately owned.
Right.
So property taxes are collected based upon the value of the property as well as the improvements. Well, in a county like, Tehama, El Dorado, 70% is owned by the feds. Are they paying property taxes?
They don't. And so they need to make a payment in lieu of those taxes. That's PILT. And so the reason is, of course, is people are still using that land for recreation and for other incidental purposes, and we have to keep up the roads, ingress, egress. We've got to make sure the sheriff has to patrol.
They still police it.
There's work to do, and the federal government should pay.
I've had the good fortune to take this show on the road, and I've been in places like Colorado, for example. And the view of the federal government and the federal government as owners of land in these western states it feels different. There's a lot of animosity in some of these other states as it relates to federal land ownership. Or am I seeing it differently, and is there animosity here in California as well? In terms of, and maybe animosity is not the best word, but suspicion.
I think there's still some here, and basically it's around how the federal government manages that land.
Right.
So do they allow it to be logged or not?
Right.
What are they doing in terms of endangered species? How are they protecting it? Are they making sure it's kept up and clean? Are they good stewards of the land? And of course, not everyone agrees.
I want to shift gears and talk about a crisis that is facing California, but it is also, I've learned, a crisis throughout the nation, and that is the issue of homelessness. In our largest county in California, Los Angeles, close to 50,000 are homeless. But I spoke with folks here, Tehama County, facing homeless crisis. Folks in Colorado, in Florida, facing a homeless crisis. What are you learning from other counties about the homeless situation?
Well, it's true that it's gone across the country, and it seems to be twofold. In some places, it's because there's no affordable housing, right? So if you're in San Francisco, Santa Clara, San Diego, it's expensive even to get just a modest place. But in other places, it's really about people not earning a living wage and being very close to dropping off, right, of that safety net and onto the ground and being homeless. And then a third of these people are mentally ill. 20% are veterans. Think about that.
Although in California, at least, we're seeing some decreases in the veterans homeless population. That's a bright spot, arguably.
Well, there's
but it's still upsetting.
Here in Los Angeles and in San Diego, they're just going out and finding the vets, putting them in housing, and then just wrapping them with services. Everything you need: substance use disorder, mental health issues, post-traumatic stress problems. They're just covering these guys, these warriors, with services, and that's making a difference.
I want to talk about transportation, if I may. I've traveled to Michigan. And in Michigan, boy, they have a crisis as it relates to their roads. That state is in perma-winter, feels like, and so their roads are freezing. And we have issues like that in California as well. Technically, we're in special session right now in Sacramento. That's been going on for a year. What are you learning from friends throughout the nation as it relates to transportation funding and how they address funding needs for roads and bridge repair?
So the great irony from being here in Long Beach is that the one part of government that usually doesn't work, the federal government, worked. They just passed a 9-figure transportation package. Republican-controlled Congress raised taxes, provided those funds. And yet here we are in California, we can't even pay for what we already have. It's really amazing.
But will the federal funding decrease the pressure that we're feeling in California?
It's a great question. It seems like it did a little bit, but really we're going to start seeing layoffs. We already saw C.C. Myers went bankrupt. I don't know if you saw that.
Tell me.
So he's the big road contractor, just went bankrupt.
Because?
No work, right?
We have work for him.
Well,
we're not hiring him.
There's no money to pay him. And so guys like that are starting to go out of business. The unions are starting to panic. Because they're seeing membership. Those guys aren't getting work.
But let me ask you, a lot of counties, LA County, Ventura County, SLO County, they're putting measures on their ballots to either extend their self-help status or become self-help counties so that they can fund transportation projects. How exciting, if I can use that term, is that for those that see the need for transportation improvements?
Well, it's good. I mean, we're kind of doing the state's job from my perspective, and taxing ourselves. But here's the problem. 85% to 90% of all Californians already have chosen to tax themselves. And so you're going to bump up against the state limit on how much you can tax yourself locally. And then what? So we're already doing a ton locally. The feds have now stepped up. And so here's this piece in the middle, the state, that's not getting the job done.
So is CSAC working, I know the answer, but I'll ask it, with the legislature to get them moving? Because, look, the BO plan, this plan, there are a lot of plans floating around. The governor has a plan. What are you doing? I know, it's exasperating.
We held a big rally, not because we thought we were going to change their minds necessarily, because in some ways you're like, listen, if you guys aren't going to fund this, we're at least going to embarrass you.
But they weren't, no shame. They weren't embarrassed.
Nothing has happened. And so the two sides continue to talk across each other. Republicans, we need reform. We say, yes, great. Reform Caltrans, make it more efficient. Democrats, we need to raise revenue. We say, great, let's do that. Raise some revenue. We'll reform it'll be paradise. And of course, neither side is willing to do what the other fully wants. And
maybe after 2016 election?
Here's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid we're not going to address transportation until we have a bridge collapse or until we have, a major problem. And then we're going to all feel really bad about this.
He's Matt Cate, CSAC. I'm Brad Pomerance, Charter Local Edition.